I'd like you to take a moment right now to think about something that was very important for you, something that gave you meaning in life, whether it was something from now or something from your past. What stands out for you from that specific experience? Are you starting to feel something? So what I'm trying to say here is that our feelings, they're quite powerful. And as you go back to a place, that one that you were thinking of, you are re-experiencing that memory. And whether that is positive or whether that is negative, it doesn't make a difference. My point is to understand what matters is how you actually feel about it. So the reason that you have that emotion coming up within you is because of the connection that you have made to that actual experience. What it means to you is because you have connected emotionally to that moment. And to connect to someone or something is going to entirely depend on there being some sort of emotion. So I want to talk about in the past. There's a lot of science going that has to do with connection, and that I will take you back in time to the early Homo sapiens, when we first evolved as a species. So imagine you were there back then with all those early humans. So you might have been sitting outside the cave, you guys made a fire, and you were trying to cook some fish that you have hunt down. So imagine the feeling of you being in that group. You would have felt safe that if somebody was to come and attack you, there are other members of the tribe there. And say, for example, you got sick, there would be some people there from the tribe, and you were still going to eat, and people are going to take care of you. So at that moment in time, you would have received love, affection, and you would have felt a sense of belonging. Now, I want you to reverse that and imagine that you're at that cave alone. And perhaps you're far on a mountain and you're looking at these people from a distance as they're eating, as they're interacting, you're seeing all that. And what I want you to understand, being by yourself, you hear a noise come up and that gets you scared, because you might be thinking, these are the last moments that you can stay alive. So the point of what I'm saying is that within our genes, right, we carry all of this with us. We carry the security of belonging, and we also carry the fear of being on our own. It's quite different now in the modern age, but this is very true today. We are essentially group animals, and we feel at our best when we connect to others. And there are multiple studies that prove this. And there was a study which was quite a brutal one. They did a study on 40 newborn infants, where 20 were not given any emotional contact whatsoever. And they just had their physical needs met. So for example, they would wash them, they would give them food. And after a while, the 20 children that had that emotional contact, they withdrew and they showed signs that they were shutting down from their caregivers. So what they did is they would stop verbalizing, they would stop moving, they wouldn't cry, they wouldn't show any signs of emotion, and they actually stopped growing. And some of them even died. That was a terrible research, but a psychoanalyst did that. And it documented that there was a high infant death rate, so 1 out of 3. And among the babies who didn't die, right, there was a high percentage of cognitive, behavior, and psychological dysfunction, right? There were no such issues within the other group of the 20 who did get the physical attention, because they received the touch, they received some hugs. So you guessed right. They had connection. But what I'm trying to say here, there was also times, there was another harsh experiment where people would, and this happened, there was a Harvard, it was at Harvard University, I can't remember exactly to tell you, but anyway, they found there was some people at the time, it must have been in the 1930s or 40s, where some people would get electrocuted because at that time people had anxiety and people thought it was a sign of insanity, and they would electrocute people, and which is crazy. And there were some other studies that, it was from the Harvard University, if I'm correct, and they came to the conclusion that the main reason for someone to feel happy and fulfilled in life was coming from the quality of the relationships. And this study went on for nearly 75 years. So I think it was from 1938 until 2012. Harvard University. Anyway, and it stated that connection is crucial and it is the strongest indicator of life satisfaction. So you see how emotions are important? So if they're important, why don't we connect? Why aren't we connecting? So it's something that's very common nowadays. And many times, the way we grew up, that had a great impact on how one be connecting to other people throughout their life. What we learn as children can determine how we allow ourselves to connect as we grow up, and will also influence the types of relationships that we choose. So, if we learn that connection means emotional pain, then we carry this like a physical wound throughout our lives and look to avoid it at all costs. So that's why we choose to relate in a way that keeps us emotionally safe, avoiding the connection that we fear might lead to pain. And on the other side of this, we, as human beings, we tend to choose what we know. So again, our brain is looking for safety, and we choose the familiar. And we choose relationships that we know will end in a certain way or will lead us to feel a certain way, and will continue to have these types of relationships while our brain tells us it is our preferred choice. Our brain basically tells us that we can survive these relationships because it is what we know, it is what we're familiar with. And it stops us connecting at a level that will offer us the deepest fulfillment, happiness, and satisfaction in life. So, as you can see, connection in relationships is not only critical to us living our best lives possible, but it can also be essential to our very survival. So, when you have connected to someone, how do you keep that connection? I want you to think about things.